From the Oklahoman, I'm Dave Morris. Happy to be joined by Jason Brown. He's the Deputy Superintendent for Oklahoma City Public Schools. Jason, thanks for your time today. How are things?
Things are well. Thank you for asking, Dave, and thank you for having us.
Well, you and your colleagues there at the Oklahoma City Public School District, among educators across the country and world, have their hands full these days as we deal with the coronavirus. Specifically, our conversation today, Mr. Brown, involves the mask requirements for Oklahoma City Public Schools. I understand that has changed a little bit, so I'll ask you at this point, what are the mask requirements?
Well, when we originally presented our plan in late June to the board, we were very confident that we would have a requirement for all staff and all visitors. We were evaluating at the time the requirement for students. We were encouraging and recommending students, but we knew there would be some difficulties because of whether things were age appropriate in regards to requiring a mask. Things have shifted a little bit, not only culturally and socially, but also just with the ongoing spike. One of the tenets of our plan is that it would always be flexible. We'd be able to pivot if necessary and change if necessary based on changing situations. And so we reevaluated that mask requirement for students. We also surveyed our parents and our staff, and it came back overwhelmingly that they were in support of requiring a mask for students, especially those in secondary grades. So our new requirement would also then be comprehensive and inclusive of students, grades 5 through 12. So we will be requiring and asking students to wear a mask grades 5 through 12. We will be expecting students grades pre-K through 4 to wear a mask. We purposely differentiate that term between expecting for pre-K and 4 and requiring grades 5 through 12. We figure that a student who is 10, 11 years old in age or older can understand the need to wear a mask. We feel like we're a teaching institution, and so we want to make sure that we teach how to appropriately wear a mask that's developmentally appropriate for ages 4 through 10, which would be pre-K through grades 4. And so we feel like that's the best language to use and the best way to approach the wearing of masks by students in our schools.
It's an interesting conversation. Speaking of masks, are there any specific masks like I could pull up a situation like this, or are you specifying, hey, it has to be XYZ or it has to be N95 or anything like that?
Obviously, the guidance for us has been that the N95 and those PPE materials similar would really need to be reserved for our medical professionals. Now, obviously, if someone brings that to school or wears that to school, great, if they have access to that. We're using the term face covering because we know that as in this new normal that we live in, individuals are having to wear masks much more often, and you find that one mask is more comfortable for you than maybe another. And so though we will supply masks to students who may forget their mask, and we will start out with a supply for our staff, we know that individuals are much more comfortable wearing one of their choice. So we would ask them to wear an appropriate face covering that would cover their mouth and their nose, something that was both breathable, but also obviously not mesh or net, something that would be appropriate to provide protection both for themselves and for others.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the variety of masks that are out there, and you're right, there is certainly a comfort level among the different varieties. Let me shift gears a little bit to talk contingencies. Was there any consideration, or perhaps is there any consideration on the start of the school years, perhaps delaying that?
I think there has to be some consideration. We presented information to our board just to remind them of some elements of our plan. Again, one of our guiding principles was to remain flexible and nimble to adjust to the ever-changing situation. And so there are two considerations that we brought before the board. One of them was the start of school, and what would be the pros and cons of moving that date back. And so we outlined some pros for them. We also outlined some of the negative consequences of moving the date. And the second consideration that we brought before the board was a possibility of just an alternate schedule, something that would decrease the amount of time students were in school, but increase our ability to socially distance. Some people refer to that as a hybrid model because students are in school part of the week and out of school the other part of the week. Is for us our contingency learning plan because we know that it is an ability to increase social distancing, but unfortunately, again, students are not getting that direct instruction all 5 days a week. So it is a compromise and a hybrid model that, again, combines both in-person learning 2 days a week and what would be virtual or remote learning 3 days a week. So those are things we brought in front of the board last night just to remind them of some considerations that we need to make as we get closer to the start of school.
Among those contingency plans are also some hardware that the students would have, I assume, just in case there's some distance learning involved.
Yes, and while we know that we need it just in case, we also know that technology can be a very integral part of learning and instruction and ability for us to differentiate students where their needs are. So regardless of which of those plans, whether it's a B or hybrid, whether it's in person, or whether the students and parents opt for the virtual option that we've provided, we feel like it's necessary to provide these technology devices to all of our students, grades pre-K through 12. So grades 3 through 12 would get Chromebooks, and grades pre-K through 2 would get Apple iPads. And so we are prepared to deploy those to all students, regardless of which learning plan, because we feel like that's now in 2020 just a necessary instructional device.
Well, fantastic. My final question to you, I'll give you the floor of what you want parents to know. It's mid-July, and granted things could change, but at this point, what should parents know for their students going back to school?
One, I think an Oklahoma City parent and patron should know that we are monitoring the situation on a daily and sometimes even hourly basis. It is ever changing, it is fluid, and we want to make the best decision for our students and for our parents and for our community. So while we want to give solid plans and while we want to say, here's what we're doing, we also want to make sure that that plan allows for some flexibility. And that flexibility may mean changing how we incorporate direct instruction for our students. So as we presented in late June, right now, as of today, our plan is to go 5 days a week as one option, but allow parents the option to choose virtual. But if the spike in cases continue to rise, if the health of our community continues to deteriorate to the point that we either have to roll back or we feel like we need to make increased safety adjustments for our students, then we will do that, and our plan allows for that. Probably most importantly to know is that recommendation for mask, that is different than we presented in late June. We allowed that leeway and flexibility to make that change. We're making that change. Students grades 5 through 12 will be required, and we will expect every one of our students, including those grades pre-K through 4, to wear a mask. So that's probably one of the biggest changes in our plan or adjustments in our plan, but also just to let parents know that we are concerned about our teacher safety. We're extremely concerned about our students' safety and health. And though we want to get back to school, we have to do it safely.
Well said. And I said patrons, you said it correctly, or I said parents, you said it correctly. Patrons or guardians of the students. He's Jason Brown, Deputy Superintendent with Oklahoma City Public Schools. You can find more coverage of this. The Oklahoman's Maria Martinez-Keel is covering this for the Oklahoman at oklahoman.com. Mr. Brown, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate it, sir.
No, thank you. We appreciate you helping us out.